Essentially, sort of the background is the Health and Safety Committee focused on how to figure out what was the interchange between uh, collective bargaining rights and safety in schools, and basically try to use the collective bargaining rights that we have as union members to manipulate the situation so that we could have a seat at the table and have a document that could potentially be enforceable. And so, under the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 150E, we have rights to bargain over health and safety or any terms and conditions of employment. And we considered safety a term and condition of employment. And in this case, the safety of and the health of our students is also a safety issue for us. And so the first thing that we thought we should do is to try and find out what the bottom line was in the buildings. And so we thought that members and associations individually could put in an information request, which we had a right to do. And so a tool was developed that would provide associations with questions to ask to find out what the status of the health conditions were in the buildings. The second thing that we thought was, and that it was a very comprehensive information request, going over many of the issues that we're going to go over tonight. We also thought that it would be important to organize members, and so we asked that employees or associations organize health and safety committees in every building, as well as district-wide committees. And so we felt that you needed an infrastructure in order to communicate with your members, as well as to formulate bargaining proposals. The next thing that we thought would be important would be to actually enter into bargaining. So we put together a bargaining, what we call a demand to bargain, and associations can take that document, and many of them already have, submit it to administration and say, we want to sit down at the table. And so, and go over, what's going to happen in the building. And so one of the tools, so those three tools are on the website, on the Google Drive that you will have access to. Essentially, the presentation that we have tries to address, those issues. And so today I have with me Kevin Enos, who is the chair of the safety committee at the Franklin Education Association, and Rachel Leah Skirker, who is on the Health and Safety Committee in Attleboro. Both of those folks are members of the statewide Environmental Health and Safety Committee, and they'll be presenting with me today. Just as some background, and I want to go over it kind of quickly. Also, as you know, DESE came out with some guidance recently, and it's their initial guidance. And we saw this, although it was initial guidance, as potentially not having not addressing all the issues that should be addressed, and calling for in-person learning coming up in September. Some of the things that they didn't provide guidance on, and in fact didn't think was necessary, was monitoring of students when they come to the building. They were not proposing any testing take place in the buildings. They had no guidance on quarantining. They used 6 feet of social distancing if possible, but said 3 feet was okay. We thought that you should have 6 feet like you do in Stop and Shop. They had very little guidance on HVAC, and they did have guidance on PPE, but they expected parents to provide it for kids. and students, and for people in higher education. Um, well, not for people in higher education, for students to be provided by their parents, and there was no provisions for teachers or other educators.
Mike, Mike, I hate to interrupt you, but would you mind playing your show so start the slideshow so the screen's larger for participants? If you're able to do that up there, up top. I hate to interrupt you, but.
So you want it bigger?
Well, you're not playing the slideshow yet in my screen.
Oh, you're not? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I think if you start the slideshow, it'll be a little more visible.
A slideshow, I don't see it.
At the top?
Mike, in the center at the top of your screen, it says Start Slideshow, just above the yellow box.
Gotcha. Okay. It says Share Stop. Stop Share.
No.
Start Slideshow.
I don't see that.
Okay.
Mike, it's right where your cursor seems to be within your PowerPoint presentation.
Let me start again, okay?
In the black, no, you don't.
Yeah. It might just be that the shared screen from the Zoom covers up that same area when you're sharing, so you might not be able to see what we're seeing.
Okay, so I'll try it again.
And Mike, I'm also happy to, share it if that's easier for you, whatever you prefer. You let me know.
Yeah, why don't you do it? And we'll
Okay.
just move along.
Okay. People got to see our teamwork. Let's see here. Share. Okay, and then you can just tell me when to advance slides, okay?
Okay. So I already introduced Kevin and Rachel, and so we can go to the next slide. Okay, and basically we went through that.
Okay.
Okay, and so this is another extension of the introduction. And so basically, the reason that we wanted the reason we chose the form of bargaining is because there's certain rules with bargaining that the parties have to act in good faith, and it allows you to enter into an enforceable memorandum of agreement. We have suggested bargaining language in our tool, as well as supporting scientific guidance for the bargaining language that we suggest. There are 19 bargaining subjects on the MTA Google site, and today what I'll do is address 10 of them, and hopefully get people that have viewed this to the point where they can feel comfortable with using the instrument themselves. We will also review a checklist that can be used by leaders in the buildings. These documents are on a Google Drive and can change as information emerges and conditions change. At the bottom of this slide, you can see the link to the Google Drive to get access. So please go on to the next one. Next slide. And so these are the subjects that we thought you could bargain over. The meeting with the association and the employer is a formal meeting with certain rules, as we had talked about before, that are relative to Chapter 150E. We'll discuss social distancing. As I said before, there's a dispute between Department of Education, 3 feet, and CDC, which is saying 6 feet. We feel that 6 feet is safer. HVAC, it's not really addressed in a comprehensive way by CDC, DPH, or DESE, and we address it. It'll give you a step-by-step approach to dealing with improving and making sure that your HVAC system is working as well as it can in the buildings. We provide information on hygiene practices, which are key to reducing exposures. We provide information on cleaning and disinfecting. We use a CDC and other protocols provide safe methods for cleaning and disinfecting. We provide guidance on dealing with a suspected or confirmed case that may come up in your school, as well as isolation space, which is recommended by the CDC. We do advocate for testing, and we advise, and it's consistent with many academic and other regulatory agencies who also advise around the benefits of testing. Next slide, please. So we also talk about contact tracing and quarantines and testing protocols, contact tracing, as you know, is also a community issue, and so DPH usually handles that. And so we also advise that you create a relationship with your local Department of Public Health. We have guidance on food handlers who work in kitchens, and that's not addressed by DESE. We provide criteria for opening and closing of buildings. We have information about PPE. And we have proposals that you can put forward on personal protective equipment. We have some guidance on anxiety and stress, and there's some good professional guidance evolving, and we've given you some examples of that and sites that you can go to, as well as transportation, including how buses are arranged and so on and so forth. So when we provide so the way it's laid out is we give you an issue, we give you some potential proposals that you can use, and then we give you sites that you can use to back up the proposals. So you can go to the next slide, please, which I believe is on personal protective equipment. Kevin, do you want to pick it up from there?
Sure, Mike, I got it. Okay. This might be a review for some and an introduction for others. PPE stands for personal protection equipment. It is what we use to prevent and provide barriers between ourselves, our students, faculty members, other people that are in the buildings with us. As we've worked through this over the months, it has become pretty clear that PPE is going to be one of the standards that we need to utilize to build a protective and safe work environment. If you read through the slide, and I wish you would all take a moment just to look through it, there's a number of criteria that we're putting forward based on the intimate contact that the teachers will have with each population of students and whether the workers will have some interaction with the population of students. In this case, it's our contention that all employees will be provided with either the N95 masks or an adult face mask of some variety. We choose nitrile and vinyl gloves as the standard, one, because they're highly protective, and two, because they reduce that incident rate that we have with reaction to what was once always a latex glove provided in a public school. Face shields on request for people that may have a respiratory issue, and we know we have an enormous population of people that are coming into the buildings already predisposed to respiratory issues, so the face shield might provide another mode of protection when the masks can't be utilized. If you look through the first component here, we're looking at three populations: the standard population, a medium risk population, and I think Mike used bus drivers as an example, where the N95 masks, gloves, face masks, i.e. shields, goggles may be needed. And then the high risk populations, those are on nurses, people that are working with pull-out populations that are going to need a little bit more protection, and that'll be with the nitrile gloves, the face shields, goggles, scrub tops and bottoms, and things that we can take away after the workday is over and make sure they're utilized and cleaned by some portion of the districts. At the bottom here, there's a long explanation about the different types of PPE that we are deciding what we should utilize. Nitrile and vinyl, again, because of their low incident rate with reaction. The mask should always be provided for adults and students. I've noticed in the chat, lots of people are asking about, what population of people are going to be required to wear masks. And I think through all of our discussions, anything above the second grade, I would imagine, we're going to hope that these students can get through preponderance of the day with the masks in place. And certainly above the middle school and into the high school level, the mask should be part of the daily activity point with the students when they come to class. Hand sanitizers should always be provided. Again, we want to move away from the hand sanitizers that have been provided over the last few months that have the methyl alcohol in them. And we're hoping that the districts understand that a lot of this large volume hand sanitizer that's being put out right now is a little bit dangerous. And we want to go with some standards that, are constructed appropriate for the students. You can go to the next slide, Courtney. This is giving you guys the standards in place. The first one is the OSHA standard, which is 910-134. That's your right for respiratory protection. When Massachusetts went last February or 2 Februarys ago to an OSHA standard district or a standard state, you have rights, and part of them are protected in this 910-134. The other components are, again, part of the OSHA standards, which, again, tell you where and what you're allowed for. Again, I can see the questions coming up, and I can understand that the PPE may be in back order. MTA is going to sit there, and we're going to push forward with the idea that the PPE should be in place before we can bring anybody back. I mean, I think that's the idea that we had in our meetings. It certainly was what we all discussed over and over again, and that's really what we're looking at. Again, I'm going to turn this back to Mike so he can move forward. Again, if you have questions, please, I guess we're going to put them into the chat now, opposed to putting them into Google document, unless they're going to go into a Google document. Thank you. Mike, this is back to you.
Yes, so this is social distancing. If you'll take some time, you can take a look at this. These are the issues we think that should be discussed at the bargaining table. DESE is, and actually WHO is saying that 3 feet is sufficient. CDC, OSHA provide for 6 feet, and we're advocating for 6 feet of distance between people. And we also provide language on canceling large gatherings, reduce the number of students in hallways, stagger arrival and dismissals, reduce the congestion in offices. Some districts like Lexington is dividing students into cohorts. They will combine in-person and remote learning, which will reduce the number of people in buildings and create space. They are also providing tents for additional space. And also we have provisions in there that students with special needs and those students with immune compromised or employees with immune compromised situations should be able to work remotely at their request. So the next slide, please. And those are basically the sites that you can use to support the proposal. Next slide, please. And I'm going to try and move this along so that people don't have to stay too long. Okay, so these are the protocols for a suspected or confirmed COVID-19 infection at a school. So the CDC says that this basically comes from CDC, that they should separate the suspected person, send him or her home or to the nurse. We suggest that that person get tested. We also think that there should be contact tracing among individuals that may have come into contact with an infected person or a suspected infection that were in 6 feet for 15 minutes. We suggest that they dismiss students and start a cleaning process. The cleaning process, next slide, please. CDC suggests that the employer wait 24 hours and then start cleaning the area, that they increase ventilation, they provide PPE, and training on PPE for the cleaners that are using disinfectants, which are essentially pesticides. And we also propose that the employer stay in touch with the association as well as with the community. And so the next slide, please, supports the notions that we've just talked about with the site that's listed below. In that site, it also talks about continuing to distribute food and social medical services to students while the buildings are closed for cleaning. Next slide, please. And so the next slide is about testing. And so we recommend that those exposed to a symptomatic individual get tested at no cost to the employee, that people with symptoms should be tested or quarantined, that positive students and staff should stay out and after 2 weeks, stay out for 10 days, and after 2 weeks, or stay out for the 10-day period of time, and then get tested twice to see if they still have the disease after 10 days. Okay, next slide, please. We also feel that there should be a isolation space provided. It's probably a good idea to have an additional triage section connected to the isolation space so that students or employees who come to the nurse after they're either suspected or a confirmed infection be able to go to the isolation space, and they get triaged there. If someone is coming in because they tripped and fell, then they could go to a different space in the nurse's office. PPE should be provided to nurses, and it's fairly extensive: gloves, gowns, masks, face shields. Also, there's coverings that should be provided for like jumpsuits and so on and so forth, disposable clothes that nurses can use if they're with a suspected person. And we also suggest that the isolation space be kept under negative pressure, and that appropriate filtration be provided, as well as appropriate HVAC, fresh air. So you can go to the next slide. So the next topic that we talk about is cleaning and disinfecting. And so we suggest that they follow CDC guidance. By the way, DESC has provided no guidance on this. That they keep a cleaning log, that they get to frequently touched surfaces, that they that when they do have to disinfect, they disinfect safely, that they follow the directions on the label, including dwell times, that they also provide disposable wipes for keyboards, remote controls, and things like that. So we try to get to the details of what would really take place, what protocols would be followed in a cleaning and disinfecting process. You can go to the next slide, please. We talk about them washing porous materials in the washing machine if possible, and on playgrounds, we ask that they don't over disinfect. We ask that they accommodate for immune compromised individuals and keep cleaners safe. We also suggest that they use they purchase green cleaners. So you can go to the next slide, please. And the next slide essentially will give you the long version of what I was just talking about. And those are 3 different sites that also support those proposals. And once people start to get used to this document, They can see the summary of the proposals that we're making, and then they can start to study if they want. And I think they should. I encourage people to do that. Is to look at the sites and to see exactly what CDC is saying. And then if you are bargaining, bring the documents into bargaining, and show that they are supported. Okay, next slide, please. So there's very little guidance on HVAC systems. Generally, what DESE is saying is that they should be inspected. And so we're saying that if they do get inspected, that they get inspected by a certified HVAC specialist, and that you should have access to the inspection and the results of the inspection. And so we're asking that when you sit down, you can, in order to increase communications, get a person who is assigned to be the contact in each building. We asked that all windows open and close properly, which is a problem in many schools. And then we have some protocols for HVAC systems that they run an hour before the occupants arrive, that the fans run continuously while the building is occupied, that the thermostats work, that they keep the supply grills and return grills open, that they set the outdoor air intakes and controls at a maximum level so that you're bringing in as much fresh air as possible. So then you can go to the next slide if you'd like. We ask that, again, that accurate thermostats be provided, that the supply and return grills and register be kept open, that high efficiency MERV 13 or more filters be used, that humidity levels be kept between 40 and 60%. We think that in some ways the higher the better, because with more humidity, aerosols are more likely to drop to the ground as opposed to remaining aloft. If they're using freestanding fans to blow air, it shouldn't blow from one person directly past another. And then there's one more slide on HVAC. Okay, we asked that all water leaks be sealed from on the air handling units, or if there's any water in the univents or other heating operations. We asked that exhaust air be operated an hour before the start of the day, and that it be run continuously. In many of the buildings, the exhaust fans either don't work, or they're broken, or they turn them off so that it's easy, so it's cheaper to heat the building. And so we asked for this anyway, but we asked that these fans be run continuously during the time that the building is occupied. And finally, we asked that regular meetings take place between managers to maintain the integrity of the system. And so the next slide, please. And so here are the resources. It's an ASHA resource for filtration. One of the other things that we talk about when you read the longer guidance is, I think Laura had mentioned, providing ionization or ultraviolet light as a way of disabling the virus, as well as this link will provide you with air exchange levels that are being recommended in school buildings. So you can go to the next slide, please. So this is kind of so it looks like in many of the K-12 schools that lunch will be provided in classrooms instead of in the cafeterias, and that students would be bringing their own lunch or receiving lunch. We think that if they receive lunch, it should be plated or pre-boxed. That they will eat in the classroom and in a designated area, and that materials be disposable, so they can be discarded, and that they get discarded safely, so that it's in a lined trash bag. Then we start to talk about integrated pest management, because we anticipate that there's going to be a lot more pests in the building if people are eating in the building every day. And so we go into details on how to increase the level of integrated pest management. So you can go to the next slide, please, Courtney. We ask that housekeeping be increased where food is eaten, and to keep everyone accountable by creating a communication system with a logbook. And so if there's a problem with pests, or mice, which is probably going to be the most likely pest, that if there's a complaint, that it be logged, that there be follow-up, and accountability around whether the issues are being dealt with or not, and that the employee themselves get a response in writing to a complaint. We ask that that access issues around doors, door sweeps, cracks in the foundation, that they be sealed. We ask that water be eliminated from like the HVAC system or under sinks, or any of the many leaks in the roof. But it's best to eliminate the water in a building, and it cuts down on the pests. You can insulate pipes and try and go after the leaks. So next slide, please. So the next slide deals with hygiene practices. One of the best ways to avoid infections, or one of the ways that we're talking about, it's very, very, very popular, is to practice hygiene, good hygiene practices. And so we ask that people be trained in best practices around hygiene, that we make sure that the sinks, the hot water and the cold water, are working, that you have cleaning supplies, that you be provided with designated cleaning stations. And so there could be cleaning stations that kids can use, as well as adults. So the next slide, please. And these are the sources that we used that would give you detailed information on the best hygiene practices. So the next one, please. And so it's getting close to the end of this. And so one of the things that's important is that that you establish a good health and safety committee. NEA has some good language. It's on the Google Doc in the bargaining section. And so you can go there and get the health and safety language. The employer shall meet at least weekly with the association to share information. The association, we want to make sure that you can meet regularly, and we want to make sure that you actually reach a memorandum of agreement on all the particular issues that we're talking, the 19 issues that we have for you to look at. We want to make sure that you get access to the local DPH, Department of Public Health. They have been working with systems over the summer and creating protocols. And so the information request should give you some information on what communications have taken place with the Department of Public Health. And we would like you to be at the table when agreements are reached with the Department of Public Health around things like contact tracing, or testing. So the next piece is the checklists. So Rachel, do you want to take this?
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Rachel Skirker. I am part of the Attleboro Education Association, and I am the head of the Health and Safety Committee there, and I'm also on the Environmental Health and Safety Committee with MTA. This checklist came about because once you realize how overwhelming this all is, we know that perhaps we don't have enough Mike Cerises in MTA to help us with this. Mike Cerisi, if you have not worked with him, he is the most knowledgeable person on all things that have to do with this, and there isn't enough of him for all of our locals to have. So I came up with the idea that we needed a checklist so that there could be a place where all the questions were that needed to be covered, along with the checkbox itself to say, yes, it's been covered, or no, this is not good, and then along a place with a notes. So I created this out of the documents that the Health and Safety Committee had already come up with, so that this way, when you're going through all of your school's plans, and that includes not just, when we think about it, you think about every single school in your district probably has a plan, so you have to go through this document for every single school to make sure everything is in place. So that's how this came about. So the first part is just preparation. You need an environmental health and safety committee in place. You need to bargain. You need to make sure there's one member per building designated as a point person. That is the most important portion of this. I, as a high school teacher, do not know what happens at the elementary school. So, and I can't help figure out what's going to happen there and if it would work, things like that. Can we go to the next slide, please? Then after the preparation, it's information gathering. Obviously, one of the most important things here is the ventilation. Coming from a school system where I know ventilation is a huge problem personally, I'm thinking that it was a problem for the rest of the schools in the state as well. So we are emphasizing that the systems are checked by an HVAC professional. That does not mean anyone in the district. That means an outside company. And yes, that means it's going to cost your district money to figure that out. But this is the only way that we can be safe. The next part is cleaning, making sure that you're using EPA disinfectants, and just the following CDC guidelines. And how often will things happen? Is the district going to provide sanitizing station? Is the district going to provide all the things that we need? It's really important that if the district isn't, that you do not accept the plan. That's why we have all of these questions here. Next slide, please. Daily operations. So this portion, I actually got a lot of help from. I put it out to my friends on Facebook who are teachers. So some of you who are on this call helped put this in place, because again, as a high school teacher, what do I know about different portions? Even just as a high school science teacher, I do not know what happens in an art room or in a gym just as well. So I needed other help. So I got help from colleagues with this. Also, you'll see that on here, transportation is discussed. DESE has not, as far as I know, has not dropped their transportation guidelines, which is stalling some of our superintendents from doing anything with it, but it is on here. And I tried to go through even starting with daycare, because I know that in my school, we have a daycare for the teachers. So that's where we needed to start, so that we covered that if your schools have it too. My school even has a preschool, and then we have preschools in a different part of the school district as well. So tried to put every single level on here as possible. Can you please go to the next slide? So we didn't put the whole entire thing on here, but it does go through like specific grade level concerns that may happen. And then it also goes through like the idea that every single, grade or subject would have specific concerns that would go through all of them, such as sharing of materials, sharing of Chromebooks. As teachers, we all know we spend our summers looking for the best deals to buy crayons and pencils. Well, how is that going to work if each kid is supposed to have their own? So then we go on to with exposure and how that will work. as Mike has already gone over. But again, this is a place to put your notes and check mark that you have these things in place. And last slide, please. And then implementation and response. So this is really important. Were all questions answered during information gathering? If no, please do not sign anything that puts your plan into place. What CDC transmission category does the community fall into? CDC has different standards based on where we are. They also say that right now, the safest thing to do is remote learning. Medium risk is hybrid, and highest risk is everyone back. And then also, we knew that given that we started this in May, that things would change. So that's why we put the question in, what are the current recommendations for schools from the CDC? It might be, from what they looked like in May and what they look like now, they look different. They're formatted different. There's lots of different things that was added in. But I also put in, will the district be able to meet the safety of all employees and students? So that this is covering everyone, from those who might be able to return to school along with those who can't. There is questions in there about what about students and staff who are vulnerable and can't return to school, and protecting them as well, along with what are the current recommendations given about schools from the state, which we know is not enough. So please follow the CDC guidelines. I will hand this back over to Mike. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let me say that. Thank you. So, these are this is, I think, the last slide. The last two slides about next steps. And I just want to say, before I go too far, is these slides were in this bargaining process was essentially K-12, that Dr. Rafael More-Areso, who was on our Health and Safety Committee, we're thankful that he's there, and he is putting together the same kind of guidance for higher education. And so that is already posted on the Google site, and so you would have access to documents that would be relevant to higher ed and at your disposal. And so whether you're in higher ed or whether you're in a K-12 district, you got to get a committee together. You got to organize. You got to get your members involved. It's very difficult this time of year, but I think that it's unfortunate we got to do it, but you got to do it. You got to, get a committee together, put in an information request to management, use the tools that are on the Google site, and demand a bargain. Get in touch with the local Board of Health, in your district, and familiarize yourself with the subject. Use the MTA tools, and look at the associated websites. They will really start to educate you all. So a lot of times, if you have a committee together, you could have somebody look at the HVAC thing. You have somebody look at the cleaning. Somebody else could be looking at sanitizing. So you can help try and divide it up as much as possible. So could you go to the next slide, please? If you have, many locals have email addresses for the members, and so you can update your local membership by using email addresses. You do things electronically as much as possible, and let people know that a demand to bargain went in, and that the information requests came in. You're talking about things, and you're discussing what will take place. Decisions are going to be made locally. And so, what happens in Lexington may be very different than what happens in other cities. The urban areas, the suburban areas, and the rural areas may all be different, but the decisions are going to be made locally. And so it's important to get into that group of the decision makers that include the Department of Public Health in that region, as well as management in your district. Contact neighboring associations, and work with them. They're going to be struggling the same way you all are. Set up a communication system. There's a charting method can be used. You can issue newsletters, and there are several different regional coalitions that exist. and maybe you can get your president or other representatives of your association to work with these coalitions. For instance, on the Cape, they have one, and I don't know exactly how many districts are involved, but they're doing they're doing bargaining together around these issues, and so they're doing community bargaining, regional bargaining, and so there are different approaches that can be taken and different strategies that can be developed so that you can get the best, in the safest, situation in your buildings for yourselves and your students. So thank you very much.